All right, we left off here with the racial and ethnicity relationships in the U.S. We'll go through each one of them of the European Americans, Latin Americans, or Latinos and Hispanics, African Americans, Asian Americans, Native Americans. So we'll go through each one of them and kind of give a detailed in regards to some of the patterns that we've seen through. When we look at the race and ethnicity, you can kind of see how it's broken out. Um, and now in regards to some of the applications and census and stuff like that, you're able to start claiming more than one race and ethnicity. If you really think about it, because like I mentioned, we are a multiculturalism type aspects to where we have more than one technically um, ethnicity that we have behind us. There's not one or the other that we have. So when we're looking at this, it's kind of a little bit of a pie graph in regards to kind of how to open that up in regards to it. But when we're looking at the U.S. race ethnicity groups, this is kind of the American of the European descent, kind of had German, Irish, English, British, Italian, French, pretty much everybody from the European aspects. If you think about it in regards to the history aspects, there is just about everybody should have some type of a European descent. If you really think of our history traits, where kind of our backgrounds have come from. We weren't all Americans at one point in time, if you really want to think about it. Um, as in for the Americans of the African, Asian, Northern, Central, you can kind of see how it's broken out in percentages. The totals is 7 times higher than all when you're looking at the European. Um, the ones with the little A's, like Irish, it's 7 times higher than Irish who actually live in Ireland, if that makes any sense. Same thing, with certain of the other ones, like in regards to, Latino, same thing. It's a high descent. Um, it's, a little higher than the actual ones that actually live in, certain areas. So it's kind of one of those things to where you can kind of see, get an idea. When you're claiming more than one ethnicity, down here at the bottom, oops, you can kind of see in regards to how the percentage in regards to everybody else or whether they're claiming. So it's one of those situations to where it's very interesting to see the breakouts, um, to kind of know kind of some of the racial groups on where they kind of come from. When you're looking at the distribution of dominance in minority groups, the lowest percentage of minority groups, Maine, Vermont, West Virginia, right? When you're looking at the high percentage of minority groups, Hawaii, California, New Mexico, Texas, you get into those areas that have a higher. When there's an average, it's usually kind of in the middle again. If you look at the middle, your high or your lowest is at the top and your high is at the bottom. Don't mind my scribbles. But it's one of those situations to where you can kind of look at it bottom, high, top, low, and kind of somewhere in there in the middle is your average. If you really want to think about it, when it came down to it, minority groups were pushed to the south, and the lowest of the minority groups are kind of left in the top. So, and it still remains that way currently. It's never really changed. It's never really migrated back. It just remains that way. When we're looking at European Americans, right? You got this lovely term WASP. WASP stands for White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. You're going to need to know that. White Anglo-Saxon Protestants. And basically what they were prejudiced against other whites. So they were prejudiced, they had this white ethnics, which is basically prejudice against immigrants from European whose language and other um, customs that were different from their own. So when you looked at it, they thought of them as being a higher white status. If you had European type aspects, then you weren't white ethics, more or less, right? So they had this WASP kind of aspects. And WASP, like I said, it is a white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. The other issue that kind of came in with it was the political and culture dominance. They placed the intense pressure on immigrants to assimilate to certain areas. Um, they felt they were higher aspects. So that was the other issue that they had because they thought they were the higher whites. So therefore, if you had this descent, you needed to go here. You had no political right. You had all this. So they were kind of pushed in an assimilation type aspects. When you're looking at white privilege, that's kind of how they looked at it. One of the culture's privileges of being white in the United States is less suspects of wrongdoing. Unfortunately, this has been something that's been going on way too much lately. Um, it's one of those situations too where it's sad to see, and it's unfortunately that it is occurring. But this kind of goes with that WASP aspects. They thought of that white ethics type thing, and unfortunately, some individuals still have that mentality of they have the higher authority in regards to that type of aspects. So when we're looking at the immigrants, if you really, well, we'll see this in the education chapter, but if you really want to think about our history, and there's a picture that you'll see, I think it was 90% of the students were immigrants in the first schools, which means not all of them even spoke English. So this, immigrants assimilated, into a new culture type aspects. That's how we ended up with the way how we are in the U.S. is that people had to, immigrate over, into our lands, and the comment of, oh, you're in U.S., you need to speak English. Well, initially, no one did. So if you really want to think about it, that saying, that comment kind of goes back to the European Americans, the WASP aspects in regards to their knowledge or their mentality. Um, so people are starting to take on adapting new cultures. Here is New York. This is actually a Muslim parade. It's spreading in regards to that type of culture. It's letting people know. It's, if you think about it, we have um, certain parades that go on through our towns. Same thing. It's one of those situations it's sharing that culture. It's sharing that history. It's to get people to understand new culture. However, you have a lot of individuals that kind of put up their barriers and their walls and not want to hear it. So when we're looking at the Latinos, Hispanics, it's an umbrella term. Many countries of origins are part of this. Um, there's key issues, right? Sorry, that was my granddaughter running in and saying good morning. So there's some key issues in regards to it. It's unauthorized immigration, right? You have people that try to migrate or immigrate over into the U.S. Good morning. So the other thing is you also have residents where they run into problems in regards to trying to find somewhere to live. Language is also another key factor. Not everybody from the Latino Hispanic side knows how to speak English, so the only language they do speak is Spanish. So it makes it hard for them to find the residents. It makes them hard to find economic well-being, in other words, jobs. They sure don't understand our political system in regards to that type of aspect. So it makes it extremely difficult for them to maintain within sometimes the US type cultures. When you're looking at the geographic origins in regards to the US of Latinos, you can kind of see this is a breakout. And if you ask somebody who has came from Colombia, if you've asked somebody that has come from El Salvador, Cuba, Puerto Rico, they do not like this word, Latinos. They're like, no, that is not that's not my origin. That's not my, race and ethnicity type aspects, right? they will kind of get on you in regards to that. Same thing with people from Puerto Rico. They don't relate to that way. It's very hard for them to say that they don't believe in that type of culture type aspects. That's more or less us labeling, but it's, them rejecting it at the same time. For millions of peoples, the United States represents a land of opportunity, freedom. Um, for exceptions, shown here, Cubans reaching the United States by transforming the 1950s truck onto a boat. Um, remember my son telling us he did a timeout in Cuba when he was in the military. So he said you'd be surprised on what would come up on shore in regards to people trying to leave Cuba. Um, but unfortunately, because he was part of the military and that was considered U.S. soil, that anybody that was from Cuba that washed up on land kind of ended up being stuck on that naval base because they weren't allowed to release them back into Cuba. So you'd be surprised. He's like, yeah, you'd be surprised in regards to what makeshift stuff would just kind of float up and kind of come and, but people weren't happy in Cuba because it's a different type of country. Same here, people from the United States and to Arizona. This is a trail that's, trying to get across. Now we have, a president that's, trying to finish a wall, but has it really stopped anybody? No, right? They found other ways, other means. There's other ways to get around. They've actually kind of made it more of a joke than anything. If you guys haven't watched some videos of that, look it up and you guys will kind of like chuckle and laugh, to be quite honest. Um, when you're looking at um, the aspects in regards to where U.S. Latinos end up living, California is one of them, Texas is other, New Mexico is one, Colorado, New Jersey, Arizona, Florida, excuse me. Um, you have a big portion over here that's just other states that just randomized through. But majority end up in these three down here and this one because it's easier to get to. If you're coming from Cuba or Puerto Rico, that type of aspects, you might end up in Florida. If you're coming from Mexico, it's usually California, Texas, or New Mexico because it's just easier, or even possible Arizona because the borders are right there. So when you're looking at indicators of relative income and well-being in regards to just median family income across all race and ethnicities, you can kind of see when you're comparing them to whites, and don't ask me why the textbook only compares them to whites, I don't know. Um, you can kind of see in regards to how it fluctuates. Um, ones that end up falling into poverty. When you're looking at the race and ethnicity of the income extremes, I mean, these are extremes. Um, making less than 15,000 and then making more of 100,000. Like where's the middle ground? There's no middle ground that they did the research on. But it's like, okay, where's the middle ground? Because I'm sure the percentages would be probably more in line and not be so high. However, there is a stance that is starting to come, and when it comes to Latinos and Hispanics, they're starting to be more recognized in the political aspects as well. Same thing with African Americans, Asians, the American and Asians, they are starting to be more of political aspects, more of the political picture type person. This is Catherine. She was the first Latin U.S. senator. She is shown here after election, and she was actually the senator for Nevada. She had been the state attorney general. I mean, that's even a hard position as a female and being a Latin American, to be a state attorney general on top of it. So if you look at the picture or you look at the aspects, you can kind of tell that majority of the individuals um, kind of develop this. picture in regards to understanding or developing, that regardless of your race and ethnicity shouldn't block you in regards to um, your knowledge behind certain aspects. When you're looking at the educational achievement by race and ethnicity groups, you can kind of tell that um, these numbers are starting to increase and improve through the times. This is from 2017, I want to say, but as you can see, if they're within this country of era origin down here, it's hard because there's really no data to prove in regards to what they have finished. Um, but at the same time, you can see there are a majority that have their college bachelor or plus. Um, as in for the doctorates and stuff like that, it's NA because there's no data kept in order to understand or to document. It's just not available to get. So when you're looking at the air, the origins of Mexico, same thing. You might get a couple of NAs. The ones that you'll really get at the NAs are the Native Americans because they, you know, if they were forced onto their own lands and they don't want to share their data type aspects. So African Americans, you guys have heard me mention Jim Crow's law. Jim Crow's law was the one that is actually part of the stop of the segregation. It was a law that was placed that stated that there was no more whites and African Americans were not allowed to be segregated anymore. Is that they had the equal rights, just as everybody else, to be in the same public areas. Oh, so excuse me. You have a great picture of that, even though that the Jim Crow law was in place and put in use. It took a long time for individuals to kind of get over the use of, and especially for the two multicultures to engage with one another. If whites engaged with African Americans, it was frowned upon. If African Americans are out in public and they still try to put whites only type aspects. If you guys haven't seen Remember the Titans is a really good movie in regards to explaining that Jim Crow's law type aspects. Your book gives a great example of the picture in regards to it as well. But we have this expectation of raising expectations, right? And it's just raising a sense that better conditions are soon to follow. Conditions have improved, but we've kind of taken a step back recently in regards to some of the mentality aspects. So we still have to continue to gain trust in that type of aspects. There's been current losses at the same time, but there's also been huge aspects in regards to the race and social classes, in regards to the social debates and that type of thing. You've had Martin Luther King, you've had Barack Obama. These are ones that are very in this high power authority type aspects that has kind of put this that gain ahead, saying that there is a brighter future for certain aspects. um, but there's still been a lot of debate in regards to why do we have such a issue of still wanting the segregation type aspects. And then racism as everyday burden. Unfortunately, African Americans still have to deal with racism on a normal daily basis. And that's kind of goes back to the history in regards to you know us um, socializing individuals in that type of aspects. So like I said, until 1960, the South public facilities were segregated. Some of these reserved for whites, others for blacks. As it broken by the blacks and whites who worked together and risked their lives to bring about the fair society, right? That is um, that more or less of the, I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for. Um, raising the expectations, right? It's raising it, it's making people realize, it's making them become aware, and it be more acceptance. Like I mentioned, Barack Obama in 2008 was elected president. He was the first minority to achieve the office. Um, he was reelected. This is a photo during his last months in regards in office. So, like I said, you have certain of these minority groups that are starting to put in their um, not put in their due diligence, but they're starting to be recognized for their due diligence in regards to the aspects, on the political scene and being more of those, that frontline figure. When you're looking at Asian Americans, the same thing. You have origins that kind of tie into it. Same thing. They have background of discrimination. There's a lot of diversity in regards to of all the origins. Um, what is their reason for financial success? Why do they have such financial success? And then same thing with politics. They're starting to become more aware and developing in politics as well. So when you're looking at the countries of origins, once again, it's a big lump sum in regards for Asian Americans. And that's the reason why I think a lot of times when you have people that are from the Philippines or Vietnam, they kind of get frustrated. They get frustrated when they get accused or state that, oh, you're from China or you're from Japan. They get a little offended because they're not from China and they're not from Japan. And the way how they look at it is that they actually speak different languages. So they take offense to it. So it's one of those things. My son actually has a girlfriend from Vietnam. And it's hilarious because she's like, why does everybody think I'm always from China? And I kind of have to chuckle and laugh because it's what people do. They take that stereotypic, what she looks on the outside, and automatically assume it's where she's from, right? And she's like, I don't speak Chinese. And I'm like, I know. Like one of those things. I get it, I know. But they really do. They take offense to it. They don't like it. They don't like to be compared to. They don't like to be associated with. Just like certain people. Say if they're from El Salvador, they don't want to be confused for being from Mexico. It's the same thing concept. Native Americans, same thing. Um, there's much group diversity. Even though they are considered all Native Americans, they have different tribes. So there is very, very well diversity within those tribes. There are treaties into the population, the transfer of the genocide, and visibility. A lot of times it's not recognized. They've kind of faded away. You really don't, hear about Native Americans. You just know the casinos are a part of the Native Americans, right? But there's hence why I said casinos at the end. Um, but they have a lot of self-determination in regards to that aspects to make sure that they kind of stay off the grid or the limelights of things. But once again, there's not 100% Native American anymore. That's the other issue, right? You have that mixed culture that ends up happening. And the way how it kind of goes back into that pure aspects. If you're not 100%, then you're really not considered Native American. That's the reason why they do a lot in regards for schooling. You have to prove your percentage, how much you are Native American, to get the free schooling type aspects. So even though the success of Native Americans and casinos has created intense envy, you have them battling against each other. Believe it or not, you have one tribe that will build on one side, and you'll have a tribe that builds on the other, because they're different tribes, different lands, different reservations. So it'll cause a rival in between the two, and it causes even more aspects and hindrance versus helping each other out. So that's part of that diversity of identity and goals type aspects, or determining the identity, who should have the rights and who has more power and what tribe has a bigger, it gets into too much. Um, but at the same time, it's one of those situations to where, you know, they they really do stay on the down low. They don't make themselves really present. when you're looking towards the future, right? The immigration debate. And this is something that's been going on. It's been a controversial type of aspects for years. But if you, like I said, if you really think about it, when the U.S. initially started, it started by immigration, you know. So it's not like the aspects of who should, you know, migrate over that type of aspects. It's more or less in regards to relationships, in regards from the how do we get past this immigration, the affirmative actions, the multicultural societies. How do we, you know, like Du Bois did his studies in regards to blacks and whites and poverties and that type of things. He even mentioned that the problem in the 20th century is that there's a color line, you know, that the relationship of the darker to the lighter races, it's incredibly, you know, one of those things, it's 100 to 1 type thing, you know, but at the same time, it still remains the most violent topic. How do we get past that? This is still something that has been going on for years. You know, it's that affirmative action. It's towards the true multicultural of society. Like I said, if you really think about it, can you say you're 100% pure of anything? No, you really can't. So, like I said, in reality, you should be able to, or you might be able to select more than one um, in regards to it. So, when we're looking at the projections of the race and ethnicity makeup of the population, I would say this number here, oops, let me try that again. This number here by 2025 should be higher. And I'm going to say this number here by 2050 should be higher as well, right? When you're looking at this, you're seeing that this European descent is starting to decrease. You know, more of your Latinos is starting to increase. But like I said, if you really want to think about it, you end up with crossed cultures, race and ethnicity between these two right here. You know, you get cross in between here, here, here. You see where I'm going? So therefore, you should have a higher percentage because individuals should be able to select more than just one. However, maybe they feel more connection to one race and ethnicity than they do the other. That would be the other consideration in regards to why the number wouldn't be as high. So how do we look to the future? How do we change the affirmation of the actions of the controversies of like the Supreme Court rulings, the potential solutions to our government law, you know, our law enforcements? How do we change all this? You know, the only way I could really take that by the horns and kind of go, okay, well, to have this affirmative action type aspects, it has to change where first with the individual, right? It has to change with one person first in order to try to change it throughout. But in order to change it with one, there has there has to be more of a following behind it. You have to have that one authoritative figure to be able to have people follow them, right? But looking towards the future, this is how we're looking for it. When we have less racism, we're having multiculturalism, right? Like I said, when it comes to kids, they could care less. You could be Barney and they could care as long as you play with me. I really don't care, right? Um, the most race and ethnic diversity of a society in the world is actually within a school system. Um, this can be your central strength. This would be a good starting point to start changing things. um, More of a working together and build on the more of the strengthiness of society type aspects. It will make more of a better aspects of like a better world. Do you guys have any questions on chapter 9? Oops.
No.
No, you guys are good. You guys are quiet this morning.